before we get into what changed, I just want to level set with everybody really quick and just kind of start with what this usually looks like across organizations and teams. Now, most teams don't usually fix something until it forces them to, right? We're all kind of like this, not really a big problem. But then when the problem comes forward and we're forced to, we have to address it, right? And these are things like deadlines getting missed start to bubble up, or something gets duplicated. And, I've been in so many situations in the past where we'll have one team who's working on, there's another team in the organization working on the exact same thing, right? So there's all this duplication because they're just not having visibility across those teams and they're not seeing what's going on. And then this is a big one, right? Leadership will always ask a question and you really don't have a clear answer. Like how many of us, I've done in the past, we'll get asked a question and we just don't know the answer. And that's kind of embarrassing. And it's also, as marketers, embarrassing because we're supposed to be measuring things and we're supposed to have visibility of things and we're supposed to have all these answers to things. So that's usually that moment where it starts to become real. And that's why, I want to start bringing Aaliyah into this conversation because, Aaliyah, this was really your reality at one point, right? So I'll hand over the baton to you if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Connor, and maybe tell us a little bit about, what this looked like for your team, Aaliyah, because you had a great story that you had shared with us, and I'd love for you to share that with the rest of the group too.
Sure. So yeah, before moving to Workzone, we had a project management tool, but it was really subpar. It was pretty much the cheapest one you could get. It was called Pro Workflow. I bet there's no one here who's heard of it. If you have, I'd be shocked. And it was my predecessor who found that tool, and that was only the creative side of the house using it. So I mentioned those other groups, strategic communications and marketing. They weren't marketing. Some of the people were on our creative side of the house tool, and then the Stratcom team had signed up for Asana and were using it very differently. And so they had to be in both tools to see anything. But at the same time, we didn't have any way to there was no markup tool within that. So any sort of proof approvals, that kind of thing, it was happening through email. We had shared drives. Everyone was using Box or, OneDrive or all these different things. So files were all over the place. And some people didn't like any of the tools and they were using their own tool and duplicating everything that they did within that platform as well. So what this led to was a lot of people, duplicating efforts, as Shannon referred to earlier. We didn't know that Stratcom was working on a social media plan. They didn't know that we had created artwork for an event. They couldn't, there was no efficiency there. They couldn't grab our art because they didn't know it existed, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so hard too when the approval chain is in emails or across multiple tools, because at least for me, that's like one of my biggest bottlenecks is the approvals being pushed through, making sure everybody's on the same page. That would be super difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on top of that, it's hard to track edits. So that was a problem, without a markup tool to keep track of which edits were requested. There were a lot of people making the same edits in separate ways, and then somebody had to consolidate all of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was there a specific moment, Aaliyah, where the light bulb went off and you're just like, this stuff that we're doing right now as you were going through that process, like, isn't sustainable? Like, was there a light bulb moment for you that triggered everything?
Well, the light bulb for me went off probably years before I was able to convince other people. So I think that it was something that I could see we could be smarter and work more efficiently. But I was actually going back and looking through my notes this morning to try to figure out what the catalyst was that finally made it happen. I think I wore people down. It's what I did is I just kept talking about it. And at a certain point, I kept telling our vice chancellor why this would make a difference. And she bought into it, and I got other people on the team on board with it. They could see the potential. And then when there was an opportunity, we put it on our short list of items for the next fiscal year to make happen. So It kind of was a slow roll getting there, although that's been my experience here. I've been here almost 19 years, and every other tool we've been kind of slow to get to adopt. We still don't have a digital asset management system. We didn't have a content management system for our website long after most people had them. So it's been knowing this environment and how slow we've been traditionally to adopt these things. I will say that over time, the more you do that, the more people get used to it, the more you can find a process that works and speed that up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the
absolutely.
difference is between like higher education and the private sector with that sort of thing? Like how much more is the process in depth, or how much more do you have to go through?
Well, it's definitely slower in higher ed. It's funny, people will say things take forever in higher ed, but I also think in some way, it's not like you're any less busy that whole time. You're busy the whole time. It's just more hoops to go through. So, we have to plan for things in advance. Budgets are being worked on way in advance of the fiscal year, which means you need to be making your case enough in advance to sell somebody on it, to find the funding. And something that's been challenging, at least at our institution, because we've been growing a lot over the last 10 years that I've been here, we've been growing and kind of moving up in the world, but that means we came from a place of, our leadership in the past was very much, oh, budgets are tight, we're going to tighten that belt, tighten the belt. It wasn't very visionary until our current chancellor came and is finally seeing that we have to elevate what we're doing in order to be seen in the way we want to be seen. And so you have to make that case and find the budget. And sometimes now we have a strategic funding model that there is some money kind of at the top that the chancellor and provost manage that we can make a case for. Within our team, we also have a revenue chargeback model. So that also gives us a little cushion. So there's ways to find the funding, but I feel like that conversation, you also have to go through procurement, and we're part of a system of other universities, and that is shared. So that means it has to be approved there. It has to be approved by our shared IT, that it is, vetted, and that it's a, secure tool that we can use. And so there's a lot of steps that can take months, honestly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you brought up a good example in terms of like where that shift occurred, right? So even though you didn't have you had a process in place, right? You knew how work needs to get from point A to point Z, and you identified like the solution wasn't just finding a better tool, but in a lot of cases, and with a lot of these stories that I hear from others very similar, is, you have to step back and really think about how that supplemental way to help make sure things run smoother. And I think when that becomes available in terms of finding a tool or solution to make things run smoother in an existing whatever that process is, it just becomes more visible, and you get less of those isolated issues or less chaos and more opportunity for people to understand where things are at in the process, so that you can make sure that the visibility is in front of everybody, if you will, including leadership, right? So we talked about leadership coming in and asking questions and needing to be able to talk to leaders and explain to them what is going on as an important part of the process as well.